this is where the highest autism rates are in Washington State. This is probably caused by the Idaho Nuclear Engineering Lab.
Where is Hanford in this picture?
Hanford is like over here somewhere. But this is probably related to radiation from the Idaho facility. Oh, and what I wanted to say, What I wanted to say, just a second, is that the radiation comes down the Columbia River, and then the winds and the coastal currents carry it all the way up here into, all the way up to Alaska. So the Hanford radiation is also going north from the Columbia River as well as south. Did you have a question?
Yeah, so why the count is in between them?
Huh?
Why the count is in between are not affected?
Why did they do what?
Why the count is in between are not affected?
I don't.
The other areas, right? The other counties in between, why they're not affected?
To the east?
Right.
Because they're not in the rain. They're not getting the rain and snow. Geography and weather are what determine where radiation ends up. You have the Cascade Mountains here. And so this is desert and rain. That's out of the rainfall area. It's in the rain shadow, it's called, where the precipitation is very low. It takes a while to understand the patterns, and it takes a while to understand radiation. It's a very complex subject. And there are many cofactors and other things to consider. This is Oregon. So this is where the highest precipitation is in Oregon, but this is where the highest autism is in Oregon. So this is part of that contamination in the corner of Washington, and it's got to be part of the Idaho Nuclear Engineering Lab. And this is downwind, and where it's downwind where there is more precipitation, but this goes down into California, and this is the effect of the Humboldt reactor, which the radiation is carried up the coastline there into Oregon. This is California. And what we have here is the highest precipitation. Highest precipitation. Southern California is fairly dry, but the Humboldt reactor is up here, and then there are delta and swampy areas where the Sierra Nevada mountains have a lot of runoff, and the clay particles in bodies of water are flat, platy, highly charged particles, very tiny. And actually it's what they put in women's cosmetics in foundation. It has clay in it to lay flat on the skin and to make a more even color. In water, clay particles are also highly charged, like snowflakes, and the clay acts as scavenging agents to collect the radioactive particles in the water. And that's why the highest cancer rates are along shorelines of rivers, coastlines, especially the mudflats, and around lake margins. So the particles wash up on the coastline. For instance, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I wanted to know why Marin County on the San Francisco Bay side has the highest breast rate rates in the whole United States. And what I discovered in a great journal, you can read the abstracts online. It's called the Journal of Environmental Radioactivity. And it's behind the fence, locked up at the nuke labs in the libraries. But you can read the abstracts on the internet. And I learned a lot. For instance, phosphate is mined for uranium, it's mined for fertilizer, but they also make dental porcelain out of it. And to make false teeth whiter, they add uranium to it. And a scientist in Italy studied cancers. She was studying materials for prostheses. And so she started studying cancer in people who were using, they had false teeth or they had porcelain teeth. And what she discovered is higher rates of cancer of the mucosa, the lining of the mouth, but in people who had this dental porcelain powder in their teeth, she discovered that every cancer they had in their bodies had a piece of dental porcelain detritus in the center of the cancer.
How do you explain the autism rates in Southern California? No precipitation.
Oh, this is Diablo Canyon and San Onofre. And so the biggest dairy areas in California are down, the wind is blowing this way. Huge ocean winds blowing this way.
But don't you need the rain precipitation, according to your theory, to deposit?
Well, the wind has a lot of fog and moisture in it. And so even though it's light moisture, it still ends up in the environment. And so anyway, the Imperial Valley dairies are here, and in Fresno, the largest dairies in California are located there. So what they're doing is contaminating all of the dairy products for Southern California. And so what I tell people is when you are shopping for dairy products in Northern California, buy the Strauss dairy products, which are out by the Marin headlands where there are no radioactive sources except what's coming across the Pacific Ocean. Now, okay, now, this is the fallout map for the United States. This is where 1,300 nuclear bomb tests ended in the United States. And this caused a 12% decline in the SAT scores by 1963 for children born in 1963. So what we're doing is killing the creativity, the productivity, the ideas that make a culture vibrant and strong and powerful and productive. And now we've just done it again. We just keep killing our children.
Why?
And killing our future.
I hope you're going to address, a lot of allegations that you've made about sickness, and you can associate that maybe with profit, but now, like killing this whole why?
It's for profits. Weapons of mass destruction. I studied ionizing radiation for 8 years with Marion Falk, who made the hydrogen bomb work for the United States, and Dr. Ernest Sternglass and Dr. Jeanette Sherman. And one day, I can't understand. I've worked in 2 nuclear weapons labs. And I said, why in the world is the University of California the only, they've had the management contract for the nuclear weapons lab since the 1940s, since the Manhattan Project. Why is a university creating weapons of mass destruction? So I sat down at my computer and I Googled University of California plus Skull and Bones.
There you go. Depopulation.
And Skull and Bones are Yale men like Kerry, like the Bushes, like many secretaries of war, all the secretaries of war almost of the United States were Skull and Bones. It's a secret society of the ruling elite in this country, and 85% of the key government positions in the U.S. government are held by skull and bones men. That's who's doing it.
So I kind of get it, but I still, like, where's the profit in killing the creativity of our youth? Now, I was a teacher and I watched.
A lot of it is for land grabs. 80%, 75 or 80% of the energy resources in the United States, that's coal, oil, gas, minerals, are on Native American land. And so they are using radiation and nuclear technologies to depopulate the Indian reservations. And I went to the Indian reservations and I said, who gave you the money for these casinos? Who loaned you the money for these casinos? Because gambling in casinos are a poison smallpox blanket on the Indian reservations. It's completely destroying their culture, their viability, and what's happening is a small group of more conniving Indians, and there are a lot of white people involved, are delisting all the Indians with families and kicking them off the reservations. And that small group of Indians are building mansions, and they're taking all the money from the reservations. Yes?
The piece that's been understand at this point is for whatever reason. I honestly believe they're immune.
Well, I have a really good answer for that. Let's compare President Kennedy to President George Herbert Walker Bush. And President Kennedy knew that radioactive fallout from bomb testing was killing American babies and children. He wanted desperately to stop the nuclear bomb tests. American grandmothers surrounded the White House with baby buggies. And that was a had a huge impact. But it was Kennedy who asked Dr. Ernest Sternglass to testify in Congress and help convince the Senate to ratify the Partial Test Ban Treaty, which they did. That ended atmospheric testing. But in that year, 1963, the nuclearizers at the Nevada test site who loved bombs, they detonated 250 nuclear bombs in 1 year. That's almost one a day. And it takes 2 years to set up one nuclear bomb test. And if you looked at the huge amount of radiation released that year into the atmosphere, and you look at the diabetes rates after 1963, you can see the long-term effects of all that radiation. Just a minute. So what was, I forgot your question.
Do they really think they're immune?
Oh, okay. So Kennedy stopped it. George Herbert Walker Bush and Barbara Bush had 6 children. All of them have learning disabilities from nuclear bomb test exposure. It's not funny. They really are mentally ill. They're mentally damaged. All of them, all 6 children. And they had one toddler daughter named Robin who got leukemia. George and Barbara Bush took her to Walter Reed, and the day she died in that hospital room, they got up, they walked out